Today, we meet one of the most important figures in the world of historical bagpipes, Jean-Pierre Van Hees. A virtuoso of the musette de cour, he has performed as a soloist with some of the world's most prestigious ensembles, from Les Arts Florissants to the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. But he is more than a performer. He is a pioneer who founded the first musette class in Brussels in 1989, brought the instrument into higher education, and authored the monumental study Un infini sonore, which translates as an infinite sound. One of the most comprehensive explorations of the bagpipe family ever written, complete with rare photographs, historical analysis, and recordings of 150 different types of bagpipes from around the globe. In this conversation, we explore the musette's identity, its place in history, and in today's music, the complex cultural tapestry of Belgian bagpipe. Hello, Jean-Pierre.
Hello, Vital. Hello, everybody.
It's an honor to have you here today with us.
It's a pleasure to have you inside.
So to begin with, how much is the musette de cour truly a bagpipe, and how much is it something else entirely? Maybe here we can also speak and mention other types of bagpipes which are present in Belgium.
I should start maybe with a word on the name musette de cour, which was just once mentioned in the late 19th century study by Eugène de Bricqueville, and was around 1975 used by people who didn't play the instrument. So the word musette means in ancient French just bagpipe, and it's still in use in central France and Paris. So the cour means this bagpipe is not a folk instrument, but in the past, bagpipes were not just instruments for peasants and shepherds. They were also played by professional musicians and also by kings and emperors, just a few like Nero, King Henry VIII of England, or Peter the Great of Russia. So to differentiate period instruments, one uses nowadays terms like baroque violin or baroque oboe. So one should add that kind of adjective to the musette too. For musettes of the period from the 15th and 16th century, one can use the term Renaissance musette and later Baroque musette. But the real details that makes the musette unique is the monoctile shape of its set of drones in just one piece of wood or ivory. So the musette belongs to the third generation of bagpipes. I mean bagpipes with an ergonomic reservoir filled by middle of bellows and fitted with keyed pipes. So the first one appears during the Renaissance in Italy in the first part of the 16th century and is called fagottus. The French musette and Italian sordolina are coming a bit later. Those bagpipes are made by scholars and played by an elite of musicians who can afford such masterpieces of technology with sophisticated key systems made by craftsmen who make precision instruments like the astrolabe. And in the second part of the 18th century, this kind of bagpipes are appearing too in the British Isles. And then we get the Northumbrian small pipe, the pastoral pipe, and of course the Julian pipes.
So basically, in simple words, what are the similarities with Belgian folk pipes, and what are the basic differences? Why it's like a separate category, in fact?
In the organological way, one can say that the Belgian bagpipes are just a standard in the family of Western European bagpipes. One have a conical melody pipe with a double reed and two drones, cylindrical bore and single reed. And the musette is working with only double reed and very small cylindrical bore, so it gives a very special sound. And of course, you have the shape of the instrument, which is much more sophisticated because you have more pipes. A musette can have 6 drones, that's the maximum on bagpipes, and 2 or even 3 melody pipes. So it's a complete different instrument, but it works the same way, of course. You inflate air in a bag, and this air is going through reeds making sound.
But it was created, so to say, in France, I suppose. Am I right? Or was it parallelly also in Belgium?
No, it is a genuine French instrument. So as I thought, it appears in France around 1555 in the iconography.
Mhm.
And it evolved there with more and more keys on the melody pipes, and then with adding a second melody pipe in the 17th century. But what one have the origin of the instrument, that's the monarch style drones constructions. That's really what makes the instrument as an own typology.
When I search for some images of Musette de Cour, I often see some images of bags the ladies carry. So the name is evidently connected with the musette, the French word a bag. Am I right?
Well,
Uh,
musette, you know, it's a Latin name who appears in the 9th century in a German treaty written by Regino from Prüm. It was a monk. So it means an instrument working with distinct pipes and reeds, and that's all. So musette is coming from musa.
mhm.
And we have also the term musa also for one of the Italian bagpipes too.
I see. I also found some information about musée as a verb meaning to blow or something close to blow.
No, it's just singing. That's
Okay.
music. That's the singing without vocals.
I see. I see. Murmur.
It's kind of a nasal makeup of.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
it's not certain this is the origin of the word because you know the historical terminology is something very misty. You know.
Mm-hmm. And how about the Belgian bagpipes? Because Belgium is a complex country. We have Flanders in the north, Wallonia in the south. You have Brussels with 2 languages, French and Dutch, with French dominating. So, how is this mosaic reflected in the world of bagpipes? Are there different types of bagpipes influenced by these 2 cultures, or
No.
what's the situation?
I think the term culture with a language is a bit wrong because language is just an acoustic way to communicate, and that's all. So, in the western part of what's called now Wallonie, but just in the part of Belgium where nobody speaks Walloon because they are speaking a French dialect, Picard, we found the last bagpipers at the beginning of the 20th century. And then we have the iconography with a lot of pictures with bagpipes made by painters by like Teniers, Breugel, who are called Flemish, but they were not living in Flanders, they were living in Brabant, that's the center part of Belgium. And so Belgium is much more complicated what the politicians have made of it in the second part of the 20th century. Without mentioning another language which is very genuine Belgium, and that's Walloon. It's not a French dialect.
Mhm.
No, the bagpipes and language has nothing to do with each other.
So bagpipes have not much to do with this type of division. Uh,
No, I should answer that. I hope that we should take respect of the fact that the bagpipe is just a musical instrument, and that's all. Make music and no politics with it.
so how many types are there in Belgium?
So we use 2 types. They are both working, as I said, with 3 sounding pipes, one for melody and 2 drones. One has a bit the same shape as the Central French ones, and it's called muchosa. It's got from museau-sac. So muchosa is Picardic dialect to say muse-au-sac. And the other one, the museau-sac, comes also from the term musa. And it's a bit the instrument as you see on the paintings of Peter Bruegel.
I see. You've played with some of the world's best ensembles. What makes the Musette de Cour so special in that setting as an instrument?
But at first, that it was not a musette de cour, as I earlier said, it was just called musette at that time. And well, all the work I did with these big ensembles were always operas, from composers like Jean-Baptiste Lully, André Camprat, Jean-Philippe Rameau, Monteclair. So the sound of the musette is unique because of the small cylindrical bore of the pipes that are all fitted with double reeds. And it's symbolic of love, peace, and innocence gives the musette a special place in the tragedy, especially in pastoral saints, based on this symbolic. So I think that's why they called me, because it's a very unique sound in the orchestra. And it's also mentioned in the songs and in the lyrics of the choir. So you really need to have it. And the instrument is mostly played on stage and not just in the pit with the rest of the orchestra.
I see. How did you first discover the musette and what made you choose it as your main instrument?
Well, I should not say that it's my main instrument because I discovered it quite late. So I already played bagpipes and flutes before I discovered the musette at an exhibition in Ghent in 1968. And I had to wait until 1985 before I could afford one. The first reason was there were no makers. There were only historical instruments in musea, and those were not playable at all. So the first point was how to find someone who can make a musette, a playable musette. And then, well, it's not a cheap instrument, because if you want to make a musette, you have to work like you should make 5 or more bagpipes. It's a lot of hours craftsmanship to make a musette.
And now are there more makers? Did you popularize the instruments so that there are more makers at the moment?
Yes, it worked. Well, the first, my first musette was made by Paul Beekhuizen, a Dutchman living in The Hague. No, he passed away 2 years ago now. But a few years later, Remy Dubois, the Belgian maker, is very renowned for making very good bagpipes of all kinds, especially from France, but also Belgian bagpipes. And I could convince him to start making musettes. He is still making musettes now. He is 83. He is still fascinated by the instrument. So, and he is an excellent craftsman. So that's how I could get more as that first musette. And instruments from Remy are much better. He's not a pioneer anymore in bagpipe making. And I could convince one of my students to start making musettes too, Bart van Trooijen. So there are 2 musette players here in Belgium. And I can say very proudly that the biggest concentration of musette players is here in Belgium, because I started with that classes, and we have 2 musette makers here. So in France, you have now another excellent musette maker, and that's Nicolas Rousier is living in the south of France, and he studied also, like Bart van Trooijen, by Remy Dubois. So I think that's good to know that the Belgian part of the renaissance of the musette is quite important.
Are those actually 2 separate worlds? I mean, people who play bagpipers who play musette and bagpipers who play all other types of bagpipes. Do they sometimes transfer from folk instruments to musette and the other way around? Because you are an example of uniting different types of bagpipes in your practice. But is it common?
Well, I should say all my students started to play most of them started to play folk music on bagpipes, so some on average bagpipes, should I say. And then a few years later, the one who wanted to learn musette had the opportunity to do so in the music schools. And when some of them were interested to make a master in the university here in Leuven, the Lucas School of Arts, and this had absolutely needed to play the musette too, because they have to live with their practice. And I remember the time when I could tour 3 weeks with the orchestra of the 18th century. I could have as much money as working 1 year with normal bagpipes. So it's a different way of, playing for a wedding is very nice, and you can have some money. When you play on tour on great scenes with big orchestras, the fees are completely different. So the students who wanted to come to study in Leuven, I said, okay, if you really want to do it, you have to invest in a musette and to learn this kind of music too, which is quite different from folk music. And they did it, and most of them are doing very well. So as I said, I could also convince one to make musette. So that's what happened in Belgium.
And the practice.
At the other hand, there are some people there are other people than my students playing musette. I know that some of them are really fascinated by the baroque side of the instrument and want to play in original 17th, 18th century costumes and so on. So I don't think these people is really interested in playing hardcore folk music, what my students really like to do. That's another way of playing musette too. Maybe this one are more fascinated by the historical aspect of it.
And the way of teaching, practice, I suppose that musette you always play from notes. Folk bagpipes mostly played from memory.
Yes, that's correct. So I start always my tuition with orality. So playing from memory, and not only from listening, but also looking what fingers are doing and singing the name of the note. So when you play a C, well, you sing a C. So that's a very interesting approach to start a bit later with solfège. So I remember when I started in September with my young students, some were kids, 9 years old. 3 months later, they could play carols under the Christmas tree, which was quite unique because the other kids at school had to wait 2 years before having an instrument in their hands. So that was quite spectacular, and I got some compliments from the Ministry of Culture to say, well, that's a completely different approach of teaching music, and that's a very good one. So, but the musette, of course, they already have reached the stadium of playing with notes, and then they have to play with notes, but a different way, because the way playing in the 17th and 18th century a minuet is not the same as what we are doing now with modern instruments and with modern practice. That's another study.
And speaking about teaching, still, what is the biggest challenge when performing Baroque music for a modern audience? What are the challenges? Maybe the way audiences perceive this type of music and preparation. Is it necessary, or can anybody be in the audience actually?
Well, I think it works quite well. When I give concert with chamber music, there's a lot of interesting music for the instrument, and it's a charming instrument too. There are also very pieces you can immediately recognize, like the Vivaldi Seasons, because there were already in the 18th century transcripts for the musette. Very interesting to know that the musette version of the seasons were kept in the library, the National Bibliothèque Nationale de France, for 2 centuries, but that the original for violin was just discovered much later in the 1960s. So it's interesting to tell to the audience. So they like it. It's a bit strange, but normally they are very surprised at what you can do with a bagpipe, because it's not only playing folk tunes and it's not playing Amazing Grace and Scotland the Brave. You play real sonatas and concertos. Some are very complicated, sometimes with the whole orchestra. And they are completely amazed. So what's this? No, it's surprising. So on the other hand, we can have a word about the fact that all the people playing baroque violin, cembalo, harpsichord, baroque hobo or recorder, all these people studied music in the conservatoire, where they had a modern version of their instrument. So they switched over the historical version of their instrument. So there was no bagpipe tuition at the conservatoire. That's one fact. So one had really to present the instrument, to introduce the instrument to the people, because they were thinking, what's this? Is this a musical instrument? And what does that to do in a classic orchestra? Is this a folk music artifact that accidentally fell in the pit? Or what's this? Because the musette is an instrument with 6 drones, so it's not just one drone, no, 6 drones. So you don't need all the 6 together, but the drone is very present. That's a part of the charm of the instrument in the period it was played. It's not charming anymore in a classic orchestra. So they really have to have the habit to play with such an instrument, with a continuous sound. That's also something they don't know in their culture, that a continuous sound is something coming from the past, and it was very loved with a very special message in the historical period, but that's something that can get in their minds very easily. You really, especially people playing harmonic instruments like organ or harpsichord. So there is always a moment that they will say, no, can you stop the drone? And yet, sometimes it's just seconds, sometimes some weeks, but this moment will come anyway. And you have to say, no, I will not do it, because if you want to play with an instrument, droneless instrument, you have a lot, but this music is written for an instrument with drones. Well, what I have to learn, and there is nobody who can teach them, especially the organ players I play in with, they say, it works very well, but you have to keep out the frequencies of the drones of the musette. You have to play higher or lower, but not in their frequencies, and then it works perfectly well. But normally they shall use the tricks they always used to play a basso continuo, and with the drone, well, sometimes it's a bit disturbing. They really have to adapt their way of playing. So this is some things you have to experience when you play with conservatoire products.
I see. Most bagpipes, they keep changing at the moment. Technically, carbon comes to all traditions. Have musettes been somehow changed? It's quite. It would be paradox, because it's a historical instrument, and but maybe modernization touched it as well. Any changes, modern changes?
Oh, I think so. The first, the bagpipe makers, musette makers, don't like to work like that. So they are real craftsmen who want to work with wood, with ivory when possible, because it's a precious instrument and it's not a plastic toy. So I can agree when helping somebody to have a cheap instrument to start and working with plastic and so. But the instrument is really making with no plastic reeds. You have to work with cane reeds. Plastic reeds have a totally different sound. And well, the pipes, it's less important. But at the moment, you can't have any more. You can't buy any more an ivory musette, modern made, because I have some ivory instrument. One is an original one. Others were made, 20, 30 years ago, when it was still possible to find some ivory, but not. It's completely prohibited, and nobody doesn't want to kill an elephant to make a musette. So they are making wooden musette. So historically, from the remaining instruments from the past, one can say we have 8 on the 10 musette is made of ivory. And the 2 others are made from grenadille, ebony, or some very rare instruments from boxwood. I know just one original in boxwood, and that's it. But now all the instruments are made of blackwood, African blackwood.
And once someone plays a musette, does one have to play historical repertoire, or maybe are there any modern composers who write for this type of instrument these days?
Yeah, one have both. But first, it's just musette is just a bagpipe. You can compare the way playing a musette as playing a bagpipe from Belarus or Czechia. With the close fingering. So you can play a lot of that repertoire. It sounds very well. It's softer, of course, but it's a very good match when you play with soft instruments like a guitar or something or a sitar. And that's what I'm doing. And I told also my students, if you want to play something else on the musette, just remember it's a musical instrument. It's the only thing that's important. Of course, the historical repertoire is huge. You have a lot of music to play. You have more than 50 concertos for musette. So you can play it in one life, but if you want to play something else, do it. And there are some modern composers who wrote especially modern music for musette. I have 3 compositions especially written for me on the musette.
I see. Let's speak a little bit about your book, Un infini sonore, which covers bagpipes from all over the world. What made you decide to take on such a huge project, and how did you approach and organize the work for something so monumental?
Well, at first, when I started to do so, I played more than 40 years bagpipes. So I had already the idea to reunite in one book a lot of things I learned about bagpipes. And things I learned were quite the opposite as all the myths around bagpipes. So I found it necessary to tell this story, because sometimes it's the reality much more interesting than the myth. And that was a very important impulse. So the problem was, as always, where can you find the money and the middles to go through Europe to make interviews and make videos of bagpipe players and so. So I got in 2006 I got some money from the Ministry of Culture to do so. And I started, and I had 6 months to work, still working in my classes and concerts, but also traveling through whole of most important parts of Europe with bagpipe traditions to make recordings. And then I started writing, and I submitted my text to a student who also is a musicologist, and he said, "Oh, maybe you could make a PhD with this work." And that's what happened. So I made a proposal to the university, and they said, "Well, that's good, please do it." So it was a part of my PhD. It was also a bit, I can say a masterpiece in my life to really need all this experience in one work. So there was also, I thought that there was something very strange, that the vision of bagpipes, by bagpipe players to beginning, and also by musicologists. So they have very stereotypes, and it's very difficult to say, well, maybe you should have another look on the instrument, because it's not only this, it's not only that. It's much more, there are much more nuances in the story. We had it about speaking about a special national folk instrument from somewhere, and I say, well, maybe it can be that, but it's much more than that. It's a very interesting and huge family of musical instruments with a very specific language based on continuous sound. So my PhD was, what are all these special techniques used to play bagpipes, which are very different from keyboard instruments or instruments with tongue of lip articulation. You have to do it with the fingers, but it's not a keyboard instrument. And you are bringing a lot of non-melodic notes between the notes of the melody. And that's very special. So that makes what makes the bagpipe a very specific instrument, and I will tell that story because it's not only wearing a kilt and playing Amazing Grace. It's just much more. The art of playing bagpipe is so much more than that, and that's what I like to explain. So bagpipes is a really interesting part of the orchestra of humankind.
Mhm. And in your research, which bagpipe surprised you the most, musically or historically? Was there a specific case which you didn't expect, so to say?
Oh, yes, yes. The very interesting thing when I started really with a PhD, that was I was looking much deeper than I should have before then. So I discovered that the very first instrument in the Western music working with three reeds, like an harmonium or an accordion, was a bagpipe already in the 16th century in Italy. It was very interesting because the promoter of my thesis is the man who in Belgium gave the harmonium its nobility again. So because it was not just an organ for poor parish, it was a real salon instrument with brilliant composers like César Franck, who wrote duets for piano or an harmonium. It was a very loved instrument in the 19th century. But I told him, okay, what do you think about what the description of the faculties? Because a lot of types of different places in the description, they say, no, the instrument can play very softly and very loud. I don't know any bagpipe who is able to do that. And the only way to do that is to put a free reed on the instrument. But I was always thinking, because all the free reed instruments in Western music are keyboard instruments. So you have a free reed for each note you are playing. And so I didn't expect that you could put such a free reed on a melody pipe, one pipe with finger holes. Well, it works. So I found such an instrument. There are two in China, and one very interesting one is the Hulusi from the province on it's Hungnanga, I think, where the Thai minority is playing this instrument. So I put this instrument on that bagpipe with bellows, and it worked. So I had an expressive bagpipe, and I showed that to my promoter. But he said, "Wow, that's very interesting." So the very first instrument with free reed in the Western music is a bagpipe. Well, that was one of the funny
It was
moments.
self-constructed in a way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and what is one thing you hope future musicians and audiences will understand about the musette? What is your global maybe dream connected with this instrument and with your career, overall career? What would you like the audiences to know or understand maybe better?
Well, I should say at first I should stop calling it musette de cour, but just musette. That's very important because it's the wrong terminology. It's not historical and not scientific at all. It's just slang, from the 20th century. But I think we have already reached our targets. There are at least three very good musette makers for the moment, because it's not an instrument was interesting, a mass of players. You well know have musette pipe bands, it remains an instrument quite confidential to play in very selected circumstances, chamber music, a concert, a home concert. Well, sometimes, one of my students played on a very popular festival called Tomorrowland. You know maybe Tomorrowland there. Well, she was invited to play there, and she had a lot of success. But I should not hope that this would be the future of the instrument. I think it's doing well now. It took its place again in the orchestra. Some young people is playing it, some young people are mimicking it, and I think it has a good future. But my dream was to play musette again, to play all its repertoire, to give it a place. So my dream already happened.
Congratulations, sir. And thank you very much for answering my questions. We were very fast, and we've covered all the questions that I prepared. So thank you very much once again.
Oh, you're welcome, as always. Vital, next time.
Yes. Thank you,
Maybe
and
we'll go around couple.
see
Okay.
you somewhere, yes, in Slovakia. Maybe next week I'm going to Spain, Graus, to visit Sergi Lena.
Ah, okay. I'm in Spain next week for the Juntanza in Orense.
Oh,
Maybe you
okay.
will be there.
We'll be in Graus. Graus is the Aragonia.
Aragon. We'll be in Galicia, near Portugal.
Great, great. But it's a funny coincidence that we'll be in Spain at the same time.
Yeah, that's really fun. Okay.
Thank you very much once again. Bye bye.
You're welcome. Bye bye, Vital.